I just don't want people to be horribly disappointed or to think, oh, this wasn't worth it. I just put all these thousands of dollars into growing food for myself and it wasn't even worth it at the end of the day. I only have a few minutes before I have to run out and take my daughter to an appointment, but I really wanted to hop on here and share my thoughts on something. See dust all over the camera. I saw this happening back in 2020 when we had a global pandemic. A lot of people felt this urge to scramble to grow food because they were worried. They were worried about what would happen to their food supply. And I would argue, rightly so. It's good to have a little bit of concern in that regard and to think and be mindful about where your food comes from. But ultimately, I think it leads to a lot of fear. And I know that Jess from Roots and Refuge talks extensively about this, about how you shouldn't be growing food from a place of fear. It takes away the enjoyment of it, and then when things go wrong, it's incredibly stressful. And I think you have to approach gardening and learning to grow food from a place of curiosity and joy, and that's where you'll get the most success and the most resilience to keep going. And I see things starting to go that way again. I know that right now, just south of us, there is a lot of talk about recessions, and I'm seeing all the thumbnails coming up on YouTube mentioning words like tariffs and recessions. And so I think we're in a place where people could start to get nervous again, start to feel a little scared again. Actually, understating that, maybe people are feeling afraid, and that's fair. But if you are in that place and you want to start growing food because you're afraid about your food security, I think we also have to be careful to set our expectations because, like I heard Luke, the MI gardener, saying this morning, I watched one of his videos about recession foods to plant in the garden, and I really appreciated what he mentioned. Something about we should learn to swim before the tidal wave takes us out. We should really be working on these skills, developing these skills slowly, a little bit at a time. Take it one bite at a time. Because it's expensive initially. Now that expense can be monetary primarily, but it can also be time and patience. That's an expense. That's a cost that you put into growing food. You have to either buy soil or you have to build soil, and that takes time. You need some form of infrastructure in many cases. There are pests that will wipe out your crop if you don't have the right infrastructure to take care of it. And so there's a lot that has to happen up front, and you can do that slowly over time. But if you are out there thinking, I need to start a big garden, a big victory garden, because things are going south again, and I need access to food, I don't know what to say, because I don't want to discourage you and make you feel like that's not going to work. But also you have to have realistic expectations, and don't pour all of your money into a garden right now thinking that it's going to give you a great return on investment this year, because it is slower than that. Sometimes you have beginner's luck. Sometimes you put in a small garden, you've just tilled up your lawn and some things perform well. Maybe you're lucky, you're sitting on great soil where you live. Maybe we have a really good year with lots of rain. Maybe the pest pressure is low and things work out. But in my experience, it's never that easy. Especially if you live in a place where the seasons are shorter, your opportunity to grow food is in a more condensed window. You can't reliably feed yourself for a year. If you're just starting gardening in, mid-May, and then your first frost comes in September, that's the way it is for us. You need to have more skills than just putting a seed in the ground. And I think it's great to start. Absolutely start. And I'm just going to reiterate again what Luke said. You got to learn to swim before the tidal wave washes you away. I loved that. I think that it's so important for all of us to start developing these skills, and not just because we're scared and not just because we feel like we need to improve our food security for our family, but long term, I think the world needs this. I think that the world needs people being more connected to where food comes from. Food is the epitome of life, like food and water. We need clean water and we need clean food. And those things just aren't a given in capitalism, where our food is very much attached to dollar signs and corporations are making it for us. Yeah. Right now I'm just watering things because although it was very cold last night, it was minus 11 Celsius. The sun came out really strong this morning, good old spring sun. And under all these row covers, it's heating up fast. And I don't have my irrigation hooked up yet because it was minus 11 last night. And so I don't want things to freeze. Now I want to be really cautious that I'm not discouraging anybody from starting to grow food, because honestly, I think everybody should be doing this, even on a small scale. And I also think once you start on a small scale, it escalates quickly. And I think that that's a way to heal for humans and for the environment. I just don't want people to be taken by some of the stuff you're going to see on the internet. None of the people that I mentioned here would do this, but there are definitely creators out there who will take advantage of moments like this where you're feeling particularly vulnerable, and they'll start giving advice that's not great, that's not founded in any experience or evidence, and I don't want you to be taken by that. And I want you to go into gardening with realistic expectations that this takes time. It takes time to master the skills. In fact, you never master things in nature. It takes time to get healthy soils, especially if you're living in a place that has been exploited, like in a suburban area where I am. This is all developer fill around me. It's like gravelly garbage. And so we're building the soil back, and that takes time. It takes access to space. And, if you're lucky enough to secure a community garden plot, for example, you have to be there. You have to go regularly. I gardened in a community garden for 2 years, and it was really hard for me because I had a little kid and I couldn't just whip off to the garden anytime I wanted. I was busy, and I think that that's also an important expectation to set for yourself. If you don't have land outside your back door or your front door, and you're working with land that you have to commute to, consider what you're planting there, consider the quality of the soil that's there, and make your investments wisely. You may want to plant something like garlic, even potatoes, as long as there's an option to mulch things really well so that you don't have to worry about watering all the time. But, you get out of a garden what you put into it. You're doing this if you're trying to grow food for the first time or for the second time or the third time because you're a little bit worried about what's going to happen in the world. We have to set our expectations realistically. And I think about this all the time where I have chickens and people talk about the bird flu, the price of chicken has gone up, or grocery stores don't even carry it. Now that problem hasn't quite translated to Canada yet, and I guess the bird flu hasn't become as big of a problem here, although honestly I haven't been following the news on that matter very carefully because we have chickens. They're enclosed. They are really not at risk of contracting the bird flu. But, my chickens are part of also a delicate system. I have to buy chicken food, and I've thought about that. What happens when I can't buy the chicken food? What happens when there's some shortage on that? When some environmental catastrophe or tariffs or whatever means that I can't get my chicken food in, or I can't afford the chicken food anymore. And so I try to keep my flock small enough that we can feed them with whatever scraps we have and bugs and the worms we have in our vermicomposter. There's other solutions. But to really be self-sufficient, resilient, that's decades of work to develop skill sets like that and develop systems like that, those truly closed loop systems. So if you want to get chickens this year, get chickens because they're awesome, they're adorable, they're great in the garden, they provide lots of nutrients for your compost bin, and the eggs are delicious and so fun to gather. But don't get chickens because you're afraid or because you don't think you'll be able to afford the eggs or the meat, or you're afraid of the part of the system that supplies you with the chicken, egg, or meat is going to collapse. These are realistic concerns. I understand that. But getting backyard chickens is not the solution to that because there's a whole lot of inputs that you still have to bring in order to have those farm fresh eggs. There's times of the year where we still buy eggs at the store, and at the end of the day, it costs us more money, I bet, to raise our own chickens for eggs. We also raise chickens for meat occasionally. We've done it once before at my mom's, and we're planning it again for this fall, as long as everything's okay with the inventory of chicks for this fall. But again, a truly resilient system where you have a heritage breed of bird that you have them breeding and reproducing as they wish, and you cull a chicken for dinner. That's a huge throwback. I think most homesteaders in this day and age, we call ourselves modern homesteaders, are living much more closely in line with capitalism than we are with those ancient ways or with the pioneering ways. Most homesteaders that I know of now are ordering 100 meat birds, and they are raising the eight-week breeds that are ready in 8 weeks, like the Cornish cross. And then you do a big butcher day and you've got all these birds in the freezer. But if the power goes out, it's still not as resilient as these much older systems. This video is probably going to be quite a downer, and I hate that. I think, we can do the best we can do. And there were times when I was driven by not fear, but, well, a healthy dose of fear, a healthy dose of concern. When the pandemic hit, none of us knew what was going to happen to the supply chain, and I was thankful to be growing my own food, but I was very aware. At that point, I was in a small space, and I was very aware that there's no way we could grow enough food for our family in that space. We could fit like 6 tomato plants, and the squirrels stole half of our tomatoes every year. So that wasn't a solution. And every year, we try to do things to make ourselves just a little bit more resilient. And at some point, we'll have enough resilience and self-sufficiency that we can branch out and share with the community and have more community sufficiency. But it all takes time. And so totally start today, start now, set realistic expectations, and set a goal for yourself of what you want to learn to produce or grow this year, and see how that goes into next year. If that went well, add something on next year. I mean, there will always be global disasters, catastrophes, bad politics, human rights violations. There will always be environmental disasters. There will always be a reason to try to heal the earth, grow food in a sustainable way, build community. There's always a purpose for that. And so even if you're not going to have a huge victory garden producing all your food this year in time for a recession, it's still worth trying. It's still worth starting. Just start small and have realistic expectations. I hope that wasn't a downer. I really do. I really want to inspire people to garden and not make them feel like what they're doing isn't going to be good enough. That is not my purpose here today. I just don't want people to be horribly disappointed or to think, oh, this wasn't worth it. I just put all these thousands of dollars into growing food for myself or producing food for myself, and it wasn't even worth it at the end of the day. I don't want that to happen. And so trying to set realistic expectations for people. But at the end of the day, it's always going to be worth it. It's so rewarding to grow food. It's so rewarding to get outside and have your hands in dirt. It's good for us. It's good for the earth. So please come and grow with us.